Okay, folks, welcome. New week, a new Torah portion. Parshas Kedoshim, which means holy. So holy. I don't think those are Mazonis. I think they're Shahako. I think they're Pesach. We made it without wheat. Amen. And if you made on the coffee, so then you don't need on that. Or what vice versa, right? Anyways. Okay. So Parshas Kedoshim, first portion. Vayikra, chapter 19, Leviticus, verse number 1. There are a lot of mitzvahs in this parsha. Very central. I mean, every parsha is very central, but in many different mitzvahs, a lot of them dealing with
High percentage of mitzvahs.
compared to other parshas. Yes, yeah. Okay, let's get right into it. Hidavar Hashem el Moshe Lemor, and Hashem spoke to Moshe Lemor, saying, Davar el Kol Hadas b'nei Yisrael, speak to the congregation, the entire congregation, right? Right, entire congregation. V'amarta alehem, and say to them, Kedoshim to you, holy you shall be, will be. Ki kodesh ani Hashem, why are you to be holy? Because I'm holy. I, Hashem Elokeichem, your God. Rashi. Okay, so Dabar el Kol Hadas b'nei Yisrael, all of the children of it. What do you mean all? Malabed, this teaches us in Amar Parsha Zu that this portion of the Torah was said by the Hakil at the gathering of the entire assembly of the Jewish people, right? Where other portions are also taught by Moshe to the entire people, right? So this kinds to be superfluous. I mean, everything was taught to the entire Jewish people, right? So why is this bringing this out? Because, well, at least some commentaries explain, because they had the right in other times that they could like absent themselves, but not here. At least some commentaries look at it that way. Okay, why? What's unique over here? Because the majority of the essentials of the Torah to Liyam Ba are dependent on this Torah portion. So, folks, we're focused, right? Paying attention.
Right, so I thought that most of the time it was that Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron, and then they taught it to everyone else.
Yeah, that's what it means.
But this is saying that.
No, look at the verse before.
Yeah, I see that, but it's saying.
What did the verse say?
Then he spoke to Moshe.
Moshe, okay, and then he had to teach it to the entire Jewish people. So in other times, if someone was away that day, they were absent, so they could,
But are you saying absent from being there when Moshe was teaching it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Next Rashi in verse 2. Kedoshim to you, you shall be holy. In other words, remove yourself from illicit relations, which, if you recall, was the end of last week's Torah portion, right? Mina Aveira, right? From sin, and whenever you find restriction for sexual immorality that's mentioned in the Torah, you'll find there, juxtaposed to that, holiness. That's why the Torah says, be holy. So Isha Zainu Chalala, as we will see soon, that it's going to speak about the Kohen, that he should not marry a woman that is a Zaina or a Chalala. We'll see when we get there. For I am holy. God, I'm the one who sanctifies you. And after the Torah, it says, Lo Yichalal Zare, that a Kohen should not defile his offspring. In other words, by fathering a child from a woman that's forbidden to him, as the verse later will conclude. Ani Hashem Ikadshe, as the verse says there, I am Hashem who sanctifies him. And after the Torah says, Kedoshim to you, the Kohanim shall be holy, Isha Zaina v'chalala, meaning they should not marry a woman who is a Zaina or a Chalala.
from that one line.
In other words, to have relations with someone that's forbidden is what we're talking about, and that's what makes you holy. Okay? Okay, now we go into something else. Ish v'imai, a man, his mother, v'aviv and his father, tirot, what they should fear. However, you shall keep my Shabbos, my Sabbath you shall heed. Ani Hashem Elokechem, I am Hashem your God. So we just had Hashem was our God, right? And now again, we're going to have this often. We're going to see. Rashi in 3. Ish imay v'aviv tiro. A man, every man shall revere his mother and father. Kol echad mikem. Every one of you tiro aviv v'imay. Revere your father and your mother. That is the simple meaning. Midrash, the Midrash explanation. It's not the simple meaning. I only know a man. Right? In others, a man has to revere his parents. Isha and how do I know a woman has to revere her parents? Right? The verse didn't say it. Yeah, right? Since it says tira'u, which is plural, how's it plural? Tira would be singular. The vav at the end, right? If you're following, so you can learn the Hebrew, right? The vav at the end makes it plural, right? That you plural shall revere. Hare kan shnaim, that means that there are at least two, meaning both men and women have to revere. Im kain, if that's the case, that a woman is included in the commandment, lam and emerish, then why does it say man? Right? It could have said nephesh. It could have said soul. Right? Could have said soul, which means man and woman, right? Man doesn't. So why does it say man? Lam and emerish. Because a man generally has the more with wherewithal to perform the commandment, but a woman is subject to the authority of others, right? In other words, she's the authority when she's married. She's more on the authority of him. That might not sound PC, but that's irrelevant. Right. So therefore, she doesn't have the wherewithal to fulfill the mitzvah as a woman does. As the man has much more wherewithal than the woman does. Okay. Yeah. So that's why it says man. So in other words, it's not coming to teach us a law. It's just speaking in the generality, right? It's a generality. It doesn't mean it's not a law. Okay. It says he shall revere his mother and his father. Why mother first? Aim love. Here the verse says mother before father. Why? If you should go to the fana, because it's revealed before God. Shavin Yare is Avi, because the son reveres his father, more than his mother. A bit covered, but with regard to honoring parents, so that's why it puts mother first. In other words, you have to revere her equally as you do your father, even though naturally you don't, right? Yeah. As the mother said, wait till your father gets home, right? Yeah. That's general reality, right? Huh? Yeah. Spend more time with him. No, now, but when it comes to honor, this comes to revere your parents. But when it comes to honor your parents, which is the verse is not talking about, right? Talking about reverence, right? Two different mitzvahs, but honoring your parents, there the father goes ahead of the mother. Why? Why honor your father more comes first before your mother? You have to honor them equally, but why does it come first? Here it's the opposite. If you should go to the fana, because God knows, and anybody who is, Shaben because a son honors his mother, more than his father. Why? Because she wins him over with pleasant words. A mother is more gentle than the father is, so therefore he honors her more, fears him more, honors her more. Okay. So I'm sure you had the obvious question. Why in the same verse is reverence of your parents and the keeping of Shabbos?
Yeah.
What's one got to do with the other? So Rashi brings out. That Shabbos I said Tishma, right? And you shall observe my Shabbos. So much where Shabbos, the verse juxtaposes the observance of Shabbos, Lameira of to the reverence of one's fathers, to one's parents. Laimar to tell you, even though the Torah has warned you, Almeira by reverence of your father, the im Yemar Lacha, but if your father is going to say to you, Chalas Shabbos, desecrate the Shabbos, Al Tishma, don't listen to him. Called mitzvahs, and likewise with all other commandments. Your father tells you, right, that you should not keep a mitzvah, you don't listen to him. Actually, the Rebbe Nasicha says that this is actually his honor. His honor is that you don't listen to him because you listen to God. Right? The honor to God, the reverence to God comes before to that of the parent. Okay? We're good?
Yeah.
Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am Hashem, your God. So Rashi explains, you and your father are both obligated to uphold my honor. Lefika, therefore, do not listen to him. Levatel is varai, to cancel, to transgress my words. What constitutes reverence for a parent? Right? Because there's honor and reverence. What does it mean? So do not sit in his place. Don't speak in your parents' place. Val Yistar is Devarim. Don't contradict your parents' words. Right? Don't contradict. Like in others, your parent said something. No, that's wrong. You don't say that to your parent. Right? You could say, didn't you teach me or tell me this teachings? Yeah. Right? Not in a contradiction, but Ezekabel, what does constitute honor of parents? Michael, you feed your parents. Mashki, you give them drink. Malbish, you dress them. Umanil, you put on their shoes. Machnis, you escort them. Umetzi, and escort them in and out. Right? That's honoring. Okay. 4. Altif lilim. Don't turn to idolatry, and to molten deities. Don't make for yourselves ani Hashem Elokeichem. I am Hashem, your God. Okay. Any questions here? Let's see Rashi. Altifnu lilim. Don't turn yourselves towards idols. La avdam, to worship them. Alilim lashon kel. The word alilim is a word of al means not. Kiloi hu chashuv. In other words, it's a non-entity. In other words, don't worship non-entities. Right. Elokei masecha, molten gods. Tchilasin alilim heim. First, they are non-entities. Ki ad tapena achareim. But if you turn to follow them, you're going to, in the end, make them into gods.
So it means non-entities basically means inanimate objects, and then if you worship them, they become idols.
Yeah.
Could it also include not physical things?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Seemingly.
Oh, is it not whatever it takes the place of
That's what I would consider.
Yeah.
But not even take the place, even if you do it in addition to. Right?
Yeah, that's
So,
Right. Yeah. That's what it seems.
I just look at what non-entities means. Like,
Huh?
is an animal a non-entity? Like, if you started worshiping a
Yeah.
cow, that's a non-entity.
Well, everything becomes in other words, something that's worthless to worship. An animal would be worthless to worship, right?
Okay.
Right?
even the stone.
Well, all the more so a stone, right?
Even a pebble.
Yeah.
An animal, at least, you might get a ride out of it,
Yeah.
Yeah. Horse, at least you could get somewhere with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Molten gods. Sorry, we just did that. Yeah. Don't make for yourself. So what is this, Rashi? Do not make them for others, and not others for you. It seems to say loy sasu lachem. They should not be made for you. But Rashi is saying here, in other words, don't make them for others, and others should make for you. And if you will say that that it only means don't make for yourselves, but others can make it for you, then that has already been said. In the Ten Commandments is not should be for you, and that's in singular you, right? This is plural. Lachem is plural you. Okay? Lacha is singular you. So therefore, we are, in other words, so you might say what you say, we're only speaking in a higher language, right? So we're speaking honorably about you, plural, right? In a manner of honor, right? So no, it's not, Rashi saying, because we already know from the Ten Commandments is lo yelacha, they should not be to you any graven images, right? So that's singular you. So what's the plural you here? It's coming to add something. That means others should make for you and you should make for others.
Okay.
That's the plural.
Yeah.
Okay, not for you, not for others. Okay, verse 5. And when you will offer, when you will slaughter an offering, the peace offering to Hashem, it shall be for your acceptance. Rashi. When you will slaughter, this portion is only come to teach us that their offering of the peace offering should only be in order the intent to eat. The within the stated time, which will be in the following verse. For if the verse only means to fix a time period of eating for them, to set a time limit with which they must be eaten. This is already something that's been taught. Im neder and nedava zebach carbonai. We already learned this in Parshas Tzav, I think it was. We already learned this. So, in other words, this is not coming here to tell us. There's two things over here. There's two mitzvahs over here. When you're bringing an offering, there is a time limit for the offering. Then there is when you slaughter it, you have to have the intent of eating it in the proper time period. Not in fact, in intent. That's what our verse is talking about. The fact that it has to be in the proper time period, right? That's already something we learned in Parashat Tzav. The fact that you now have to have intent as such, that's what this verse is coming to say.
You have to have intent, and then you have to eat it within the proper time period.
Exactly. Okay.
So you could transgress it twice. That one thing.
Right. This is called pigul. Right. That when you have the improper intent. But in other words, I'm going to eat in 2 days from now. Right? No.
The korbanos.
We did. The fact, if you did, not the intent.
The intent also.
And actually, you know what? It does. We did have it, but maybe not for shlomim.
But the word pigul is only here that it appears.
Huh?
The word pigul, we haven't seen pigul yet.
We did.
Pigul?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, we did. But well, for sure we saw it. I think it's in the pasuk, not Rashi, if I recall. We'll have to look. We don't have time now because we got a truck over here because there's a lot. Okay. We did, but I'm not certain if it was for shlomim. This is a peace offering. So that I don't remember. It might have been a chatas. It might have been for the sin offering. I don't remember. So we'd have to double check. Seemingly, because this is what Rashi is saying, and we're speaking about a peace offering over here. But yeah, tzarech, we need to look into that. Okay. The next Rashi, you shall slaughter it to appease for you. At the outset of the slaughter, again, tizbachu means slaughter it. For your appeasement, you need to slaughter it, right? Before, what did it say? It says, when you will slaughter it for a peace offering, right? So, and when you slaughter it, you need, it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. It does speak about it in some.
Yeah, but what is it speaking about it? What about shlamim? Okay. It's interesting. Like, I don't know how Rashi gets from the words, even the intent over here. When you slaughter it, I if anything, I would say it'd be the slaughtering for the sake of the peace offering, right? Because where's time come into this? Okay, let's see. Let's go further into Rashi. We're saying you should slaughter to appease you. In the beginning of slaughter to almanas should be with the intent, nachas ruach, to give contentment to God. Right? In other words, do it for the intent of giving contentment to God by doing this offering, these peace offerings. And it should be an appeasement for you before God, on God's behalf. Because if you will have a thought that's of an invalidation with regard to the offering, it will not appease for you, before me. Rashi, the ritzain chem, right, which means for your acceptance, for your appeasement. The word ritzain in Old French, apemo. Say lefi pshutai.
Yeah, that's
Huh?
quite old, yes.
What it's referring to is apesman.
But we're not talking modern French. This is a non-modern French zone.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a Rashi zone.
This is an old French zone. And when Legault comes, we'll teach him a thing or two.
By the way, Rabbi, there's a note here in the Chayenu concerning our previous question. It says, although this teaching is also stated in 718, as Rashi explains there, it is written to teach us the punishment for slaughtering, that it will not be accepting, and for eating them. Whereas here, it's the actual prohibition. There, it's speaking about the punishment.
The punishment.
And prohibition.
Well, that's interesting. The opposite, which is opposite of yesterday that we spoke about the prohibition of any sexual misconduct, and we're going to learn soon about the punishment. That's the opposite. Interesting. Okay. Shkaya, thank you for that. The fi pshutei. So according to the simple meaning, what does it mean? Appeasement, right? The Rabbeinu lamdu mikan. Our sages learn from here. Shemisasing Kedoshim, the tzom, and who performs an unintentional act, which is holy. Sheposel, an act that's invalid. Shetzorich, she's kaven lishchay. He must have the intention to slaughter. Right? You have to have the proper intent. In other words, you can't just do this autopilot.
Yeah.
Right? This is the perfect idea of you can't live life on autopilot, because if you did it, it's on an appeasement to God. Verse number 6. So you know what? This past verse is connected with this verse, and that's why I asked the question in the past verse. How do you know it's got to do with any time period, right? With intent. And the verse didn't say it, because this verse does. It may be eaten on the day of the slaughter, or the following day, and the leftovers, right? Don't tell my wife about this verse. She doesn't like leftovers, and now this is God talking. He doesn't want leftovers. On the third day, it should be burnt in fire, right? Oh, it just means you shouldn't have leftovers that but you
After
eat
3 days.
leftovers right away.
Yeah.
Right? They're gonna go bad afterwards. It may be eaten on the day of your slaughter. Rashi, when you slaughter it, you shall slaughter it with the intent of eating it within this period that I've already fixed for you. Another, I've already fixed for you in the previous verse. So you have to have this intent. Is in this verse. Interesting. Okay. Verse 7. That if you will eat on the third day, pigul who? Lo yirate. Oh, here's the word pigul. A pigul, it's an abomination. Who it is? Lo yirate, it will not be accepted. Rashi. But if he will eat. If this verse is not applicable to the thought of eating it beyond its time, because that's what the verse is speaking about, right? Eating it outside of its time. Because this is already has been said. And if there will be eaten some of the flesh of the peace offering outside of its proper time, learn it as applied to the thought of eating it outside of its designated place. In other words, there's time and space, right?
Mhm.
So there's the time that you ate it outside of the time period, and there's also outside of the space, meaning this is kachim kalim, so you could eat this anywhere in Jerusalem, right? In the walled area at least, right? You can do that because it's a lower level of holiness, as opposed to if it was a sin offering, you can only eat it in the courtyard, you can't eat it outside, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's also if you had it outside of the designated place. So one might think that you deserve kares for eating it. In other words, outside of its time period, right? You might think that. In other words, because you're going to equate it with outside its space.
Mhm.
Outside its space, we learned that. If you learn it outside, that was last week, right?
Yeah.
Last week we learned in the fourth or fifth reading, right?
Can't do it.
That no, not just you can't do it.
Yeah.
You can't do it, that's for sure. But you get karis, premature death.
Oh, yeah.
So you might think also over here equate space with time. That you also get kares, you'll get premature death. Talmud Leimar, the verse says otherwise. The verse says earlier, not now, that the soul that eats it shall bear its sin, mimenu and others from it, but not from what that's related to it. That means outside of the one who slaughtered it with a thought that eating outside of its place has left its category and is punished by kares. In other words, if there's a fact and there's the thought, right? The fact is, if you did eat it outside of its place or outside of its time, the fact is you get kares, right? Because the fact you did, in fact, do it. But what if you had the intent? That's what we're talking about here. The intent of doing that, but in fact didn't do it. You don't get kares.
And
Your sin you will bear, right?
yeah.
Its sin you will bear. Actually, not your sin. Its sin.
Mhm.
Its sin, meaning not its friend's sin. What's its friend's sin? Well, thought and action are kind of, your thought leads you to your action, right? But that's your friend's sin that you won't bear. So you won't get kares, you won't get premature death, but it's its sin you bear because it becomes an abomination. It's not accepted.
And
Follow?
is this applying to time and space?
Yes.
Okay, so it's like taking from
Although we're speaking about time here.
Yeah.
But yeah, Intent,
Intention,
not
action.
fact, not your action.
But where do we see that the intention, that the action of eating beyond the time, not beyond the space, beyond the time, where do we see that it's correct? Then in this parsha?
No. It's Avainai Isa.
No, I'm talking about the action, not the thought.
Huh?
The action of eating.
Because there it says, because it says chorus. It says chorus. It said last week, it said chorus. It said last week, chorus.
Eating beyond the time? Or beyond the place?
Beyond the place, actually beyond the place. Yeah, beyond the place.
The action of eating beyond the.
Oh, that might have been in Tzav. That I don't remember. But that might have been in Tzav. Last week was
It is correct?
space, right?
Yeah, last week is space.
It's space.
The eating beyond the time, the action.
Yeah, that might have been in Tzav, not last week. And that we have to look. It's a good thing we're going to learn this again next year.
Review.
Hopefully the right time and that's space.
Last week's parsha, we got a double portion of it. We read it, learned it twice. This week, with all this stuff here, it would be a great one to learn twice. Okay, Pigul. Last, the next Rashi in Pigul, rejected or abomination. Mituyav, it's a repulsive. Kamayo Marak Pigulim. He's just giving an example. It's the gravy which was repulsive in the vessels. He's just giving an example of what that word means. Okay. But Eichalav Avayna Yisa. And its eater, it's his sin he shall bear. He as Kedosh Hashem Chila. Because of the holiness of God, he profaned. Oh. And that soul now being cut off from its people. So what's this talking about now?
So we have the answer. Eating outside. That's the question that I just asked.
Right. Well, Eichlav. Yeah. Eating, the fact. In other words, Eichlav is not intent anymore. Right? So this verse, how do we know that before was? Because before it didn't say your thoughts. How do we know it was thoughts? Because now it's saying the fact of eating. So it means before that, it was what you had intent. Right?
Does this depend on time and space? Time or space or
It's both. Here we're talking about time. Right? Because that's the reference here is time.
Okay.
Or here we're talking about time. Right? Last week was space.
Yeah.
Okay. Whoever eats it will bear its sin. This is speaking about absolute noiser, meaning leftovers, right? Again, don't tell my wife about this.
I have a feeling she knows about it.
Yeah, she knows it intuitively, not from the verse.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and the word is appeasement, right? Appeasement. I don't like leftovers. He's not punished kares, ala nishcha chutz l'mkaimai, that which was slaughtered outside of its place. Now, there's the meat that is offering that was slaughtered with the intent to be eaten outside of the area, right? That's the preceding verse.
Yeah.
In other words, right, the thought of it. And right, you don't get ala nishcha chutz l'mkaimai. Shekvar miyuta kosa, because the verse already excluded it from kares. Right, as we previously explained, Shekvar Zewan v'Neiser Gomer Medaber, but this is speaking about absolute Neiser, leftover. That there they learn it from Gzera Shava. Okay. Not sure why we have to learn from Xavier Shava. Why isn't it in the reference of the continuation of the verses? I'm not clear on that. Okay. We finish with this. Now we go to the next mitzvah. It's Ksir Arzachem. The Ksir means, Kotzer means harvest. In your harvesting of the harvest, or reaping the harvest, if you will, Arzachem in your land, meaning in Israel, Lo Sechale Pas Sadcha, do not end. Sechala means to end, meaning don't use don't use pasatcha, the corners of your fields, or to reap. You're not allowed to reap the corners of your field, right? This is going to, as we're going to see, this is going to go for the poor, that they can come to the four corners of your field and take food from there, right? But leket, and leket is gleanings, gatherings, like Likutei Amorim. Tanya is called Likutei Amorim, right? Gatherings of teachings, of sayings, right? So gatherings, ktsircha of your reaping, lo salakit, do not harvest. Let's see Rashi, what this is talking about. Lo shall not finish the corners of your field. She'aniyach, that you should leave them aside for the poor. Means the corner of end of each field. And the gleanings, meaning the gatherings of your harvest, shibolem stalks that fall away, when you are reaping, meaning one or two of them, but three of them or more, and a leket is not considered gleanings that you have to leave it over. Okay?
Is this referring to stocks in the corner or just stocks anywhere throughout?
No, that's anywhere.
Okay.
Corners is the entire corner.
Yeah.
It's the entire corner.
Yeah.
But this is now you're harvesting the rest of your field. You went and harvested and you left something there.
Yeah.
If it's one or two, then you have to leave it there. If it's three or more, then you're not obliged. Okay.
If you left it, or is it just if as you were harvesting there were one or two, like that drop?
Well, yeah, it's not shikha actually, so it's not like you forgot it. But it fell. You're aware of it. You're aware of it, and it fell. You can't take it, right?
The poor aren't restricted to the corner. They could go anywhere in your field where they see like one or two stalks.
Okay, that's not for now.
Okay.
That's Rambam. Okay, that's not so simple,
Okay.
right? Because corners they have access to,
Yeah.
right? But to just anybody walk into your field at any time, no. But means it has to be put aside for the poor.
Okay.
That they can just walk in into any of your property and just take like that. No, that's a different story, right? Anyway, let's. I got to focus over here because we don't have enough time to finish everything, and we want to finish it. Okay. And your vineyards, also the gleanings, or the fallen individual grapes, you shouldn't gather. They are for the poor or for the stranger. Leave them for them. I am Hashem, your God. Okay. Rashi. So I'm going to be very now kind of like focused over here because that way we can get finished. Okay.
All right.
You shouldn't harvest the young grapes. He told them not take the young grapes that are in your vineyard, and they're identifiable. What is a young grape? That doesn't have a shoulder. Or that it drops. Okay. That's called a young grape. And the fallen fruit of your vineyard. This refers to single grapes. That fall off the clusters. The shas when you're picking the grapes. Those you're not allowed to pick up. You have to leave them for the poor. Now again, how they get that, that's a different story. Okay, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am the Lord your God. I am a judge who exacts punishment. The Ene Geiva Mikem Ella Nefashis, I will take my payment, but nothing but lies. Shenemar, as it says, Tigzol Dal, do not rob the poor man. Ki Hashem Yariv Ribam, the Kabe es Gaiveam Nefesh. Hashem will fight his fight and despoil the lives of those who despoil them. You're going to take away from their life. I'm going to take away from your life.
Yeah.
11. Lo tignevu, do not steal. Lo chasheshu, and do not deny falsely. Lo shakru, do not lie. Ish bam isai, a man with his fellow. Rashi in 11. Like tignevu, do not steal. What does this mean? We already in the 10 Commandments it says, right? Hazara, this is a negative commandment. A moment, stealing money. But not to steal, that says in the 10 Commandments, is a negative commandment, not to steal people. In other words, kidnap. This is a matter that This is because it's a matter which is learned in its context. The Abba Shekhaim Elohim means is based in because it's something liable for a court imposed death penalty. Right? There's a death penalty in everything that is mentioned in 10 Commandments. Not everything, and those things. So therefore, that's there speaking about kidnapping, and here it's speaking about in the context of what we're speaking about. Don't steal from the poor, right? We're talking about poor that what belongs to them. So we continue with that idea. Lo yichashishu, do not deny falsely. Rashi, Lefishin Emar, because it says it says earlier in Parshas Vayikra, I think it was, that you shouldn't deny that if you deny, you have to pay the principal and a fifth more, right? When you are denying, making a false statement. Lamdu einish, we have learned the punishment, hazara minayin. So there's two things. There's punishment that Torah tells you, and also tells you azhara means the warning. In other words, making it into a prohibition, right? There's the prohibition, and then there's the punishment that comes if you, if you do the prohibition, right?
Yeah.
There's the punishment that comes with it. So where do I know the negative commandment? So here, our verse is telling us not the punishment, but it's coming to tell us the commandment itself, the negative commandment. You should not lie, because it says, if you swear falsely, that you pay. And others, we already know that the punishment, we already learned this. You pay the principal and pay the fifth if you're going to, right? So we've already learned this in again, I think it was Parshas Vayikra. We learned that. So, but that is the punishment. Where do we know the prohibition? What our verse is coming to say. Don't lie. Following? Do not steal, do not deny falsely, do not lie, and do not swear falsely in my name. If you have stolen, if you've stolen, so the verse is coming to tell us the order of what's going to happen. If you steal, in the end, you're going to deny falsely. And then you're going to lie. And then you're going to bear false witness because you're going to have to take testimony, and you will bear God's name falsely. 12. Should not swear in my name falsely. And you will profane the name of God. I am God. 12 in Rashi. Shall not swear falsely in my name. Why is this telling us over here? I mean, didn't we just say that? Right?
Yeah.
Because it says, actually, in the 10 Commandments, right? It says that you should not take the name of God in vain. So you might think that you're only liable swearing falsely in God's name, only by swearing on God's name, the Tetragrammaton. Right? Why? Because that's what it says here. In the 10 Commandments, it says, do not swear in the name of Hashem Elokecha. Also, maybe if I say Hashem Elokecha, right? But here the verse didn't say God's name, just my name.
Yeah.
So that's coming to include something more, right? Minayin l'rabbis, how do I know that it includes kol kinuim? Any of what's called kinuim means alternative names of God. Talmud Leimar, so the verse comes to Zilis, Yishav Bishmi, Sheker, don't swear in my name, which implies kol shem yeshli, any name that I have, right? Any name that I have. In other words, not just the Tetragrammaton, but the name Kale, Tzvakais, right? All those names. It doesn't say over here, those are names, right? There's 7 names that you're not allowed to erase. So you might think it's only when it says Hashem, maybe a Tetragrammaton. No, any name. Okay. 13. Do not oppress your friend. Do not rob him. itcha ad baker, and the hired worker's wage should not remain overnight until morning. Let's see Rashi on this. Lo sashe, you should not oppress or cheat. It means withhold the wages of a hired worker. Lo salin, it should not stay overnight. Lashon nekeva, it's a feminine verb. Musav ala pu'ula, which refers to the work that the person did. I'm not sure what Rashi's saying this, but anyway. Ad baker until the morning. We're talking about here a hired day worker, right?
Yeah.
In other words, working 9 to 5, for example. It's also that he leaves work at 5. When the sun sets, that's a day worker, right? Therefore, when is the time that he collects his wages? Remember, he's working for the day.
Yeah.
Right? You made up for the, you didn't make up for the month. You didn't make, right? So then you may work for the month. You might say that you have the whole month that you can pay at the end of the month because that's what you made up. But here you're only paying, he's working for the day, right? So therefore, when the sun sets, when he can collect his wages, called a light is the entire night. Right? In other words, you have to pay him till the morning,
Yeah.
right? That's when your time of payment is.
So wait a minute, so you don't pay him at the end of the.
Well, in other words, you have until sunset when he finished working until the morning to pay him. That's your the leniency is until the morning, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Okay. Elsewhere it says, that the sun should not set over him. In other words, that he shouldn't wait until sunset to collect his wages. So what's that talking about? That seems to contradict.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So Rashi says, this is speaking about someone who's a night work, who's doing the night shift. So in other words, he does a night shift till the morning. Can you pay him till sunset? Until sunset.
The next day.
Of that day.
Yeah.
He worked till 6 a.m.
Yeah.
So you have till 6 p.m. to pay him.
Yeah.
If sunset was 6 p.m., right?
Basically, I have 12 hours.
Yeah. Or sunrise, sunset.
Sunrise, sunset.
Yeah. Shlomo's Boo will also to complete completion of his work. Shiyal Amud Shachar is the break of dawn. Therefore, it's the entire day that he has for his collection. The fish and also Torah is man labalabais. Torah is given the employer a time period by day or by night. The vakish is to seek to pay his worker. Now, the Torah is giving you time that you can pay him.
Right.
And instead of paying him literally at that,
When he finishes.
right? But that's again because he's only working for the day.
No.
If you made up for the week, you made up for the month, that's a different story.
Right.
Okay. 14. Lo sekalel cheresh, do not curse a deaf person. Before a blind person, do not put a stumbling block. And have fear of God. I am God. Rashi in 14. Oh, this is our last verse. Look at that. We're going to make it happen. You should not curse a deaf person. Ainli ela cherish. So the verse is only talking about a deaf person. How do I know anybody else? How do I know that any person you shouldn't curse? Talmud loymar, because the verse says, you shall not curse among your people. If that's the case, the prohibition is unlimited cursing a deaf person, meaning everybody. So why does our verse tell us a deaf person? Others, it says the verse tells us elsewhere in we already learned this in Shmois, in Exodus, in Parshas Mishpatim. We learned there, right, that you shouldn't curse anybody in your people. So then obviously that includes also a deaf person. So why does the verse tell us a deaf person over here? Right? So deaf person is a distinct quality of being alive. So likewise, the cursing, means anybody who's alive. This excludes anybody who has died. That's not alive, that if you curse him, there's no prohibition against cursing a dead person. A parent, you're not allowed to curse after they pass away. Another person, you could. Interesting.
Say it again, Rabbi.
You're not, there's no prohibition against someone who died and you curse them. Right?
I would feel that it's not that.
The prohibition means it's not a prohibition. It doesn't mean it's something that's proper. Doesn't mean it's proper. It just means there isn't a prohibition. Right? Like you said, I guess is making a distinction to a parent. In other words, you have to be even more sensitive and not curse them after they've passed away.
Wouldn't this logic though mean that you could curse a deaf person when he's alive?
What do you mean?
Just because if it's saying that.
No, but the verse says he shouldn't curse a deaf person. That's what our verse is saying. So the question is, what do I need the verse to tell me that?
Okay,
If it says you can't curse any person,
yeah,
that includes a deaf person.
that includes it, okay.
Truly, I don't understand this because why is it? Why the deaf person?
single out
To me, it'd be
deaf
the deaf person, even though he
Just
can't hear the
like this.
curse. Nonetheless, the fact that you said something, you brought it into
It's
words.
more like a dead person then, wouldn't it
Just
be?
like the deaf person can't hear you and the dead person can't hear you, they both can't hear you. But the fact that the deaf person is alive makes it that you're not allowed to.
And he's alive and yet deaf.
Basis
In
of-
other words, he's alive, but he didn't even hear you,
Yeah,
right?
but you still can't curse.
Still can't curse him. Yeah. Okay. And before a blind person, do not put a stumbling block. In front of a blind person in particular matter, so Rashi explains, what does it mean a stumbling block? Does it mean don't put a stool there that he's going to trip over? No, it doesn't mean that. It means don't give him advice, again, it's like that is not appropriate for this individual. Al Taimar, and do not say, sell this field and buy yourself a donkey. And it's not a good advice, right? For whatever. And you thereby twist him to take advantage of it. And you take his field from him and you sold him your donkey or whatever, right? Don't do that. And you should have fear of God. Why does it say that? Because this matter is given over to people to know, since people are unable to determine if the intent of the individual is that he gives the bad advice, l'teva, maybe it's for his good, maybe it's good, or l'ra, maybe it's bad. So he's able to escape blame. To say, I meant only good. I mean, you think I wanted to sell his Manhattan real estate for my donkey? I mean, that donkey is important to have. I only meant good, right? So, in other words, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? You know what you're going to say? You have the fear of God. That's the only thing you can do.
Rabbi,
Well, let me just finish. Okay. So you can say milafika. Therefore, it says, you should have fear of God. God knows what your true thoughts are and what your intents are. Likewise, anything that's given over to the heart of the individual, whatever they do, and the intention behind what they do, and other people might not know. Maybe yes, you meant well. Maybe you didn't mean well. We can't always know. Therefore, it says you should have fear of God. Yes. Go ahead.
I believe my Hebrew, but is fear here in the plural?
No, singular.
Singular.
It's in singular.
Yaresa.
Yaresu would be plural. Vayira'u, sorry. Yeah. Vayira'u would be plural. So it's singular.